Today we'll break down 3 borderline magical conflict resolution tips backed by real live science that you can use to stay calm, communicate more effectively, and stop the chaos constantly swirling around us all from spiraling out of control. Whether you're dealing with workplace mayhem, family drama, or just grappling with the eternal call of the void, these simple tools can make all the difference between escalation and calming the chaos. To start, you need to understand some of how brains work. Much of the human brain is secretly just a feral animal brain, solely focused on survival. And that's really helpful if you're constantly being chased by dingoes, but less helpful when it comes to talking to other humans. Most famously, the amygdala handles the fight or flight response, and often causes us to make terrible decisions out of fear or anger. On the other end of the spectrum is the prefrontal cortex, which handles executive function. It deals with impulse control and thinking about long-term consequences, and it develops slowly as you age. Toddlers barely have a prefrontal cortex, which is why they will enthusiastically eat a rock. Each of these techniques help us put the prefrontal cortex back in charge and bridle the panicky lizard brain hiding in each of us. The first trick is very simple, and that's to recognize when you're in a reactive state and to label what you're feeling. Dr. Daniel Siegel calls this name it to tame it, because labeling what you're feeling has been proven to decrease emotional reactivity. Obviously, this isn't something you have to do out loud, because standing up in the middle of a staff meeting to shout, "I'm feeling frustrated with all of you," might not be the best way to handle it. Name it to tame it can be done quickly and internally, and it will still help shift the thinking pattern from the amygdala back to the prefrontal cortex. Crucially, it also has the added benefit of forcing you to stop and shut up for a second before you say something you'll regret. When tensions get high, shutting up for a second and thinking things through is one of the safest courses of action.
So, I should stop talking?
If you can.
And I know just a few seconds ago I said that there were 3 quick tips, so this is tip 1.5. Which is that breathing exercises are another great way to accomplish this same thing. And which breathing exercise you do probably doesn't even matter that much. If you feel furious or overstimulated or like you just need to strangle someone, forcing yourself to take a couple slow, deep breaths before you say anything can help calm the amygdala and put the rational brain back in control. Since a lot of my life comes with looking at things like this in the workplace, let's look at a generic workplace example in the form of a performance review. Let's pretend that you've been absolutely smashing it at work lately. Not only doing your job, but it seems like you're picking up the slack for everyone else too. All your KPIs and other corporate jargon are way above average. So this review should be a piece of cake. And maybe you can talk yourself into a raise while you're at it. But almost immediately, your boss looks at you and sighs, saying that they've just been so disappointed in your work lately, and that you really need to step it up. Now, it would be perfectly natural for you to get angry and defensive in this situation. Maybe saying something like, "Are you blind or just an idiot?" before telling your boss where they can shove their KPIs. But using our new tip, we can take a deep breath, have a moment of self-reflection to do some naming and taming. Because of course you're angry. But if you look past that, you may also notice that you're surprised. Maybe even a little bit betrayed. And those are feelings we can work with. Once you've calmed down and successfully managed to avoid insulting anybody's ancestors,
Dishonor on you! Dishonor on your cow!
you can now trust yourself to actually speak. Which is where tip number 2 comes in, and that is to ask questions. If you know anything about me, then you know that asking questions is kind of a theme. Because as people, we tend to make a lot of assumptions, and pretty much all of them are wrong. And honestly, how are we supposed to make good decisions if we're missing important information? Asking questions also has the added benefit of helping you calm down. Because you aren't focused solely on yourself anymore. It's much harder to be angry at someone when you're sincerely curious or interested or trying to find information. As Walt Whitman, and then later Ted Lasso, famously said, Be curious, not judgmental.
Barbecue sauce.
Now, you do need to ask good questions, but that's a whole nother video. In short, you just want to make sure you're getting all the relevant information before reacting. Going back to our performance review example, you might ask, really? What part of my work has been disappointing? And the boss might say, well, the standard metric for your role is to do 10 thingamajigs every week. And the reports show that you're only doing 3 to 4 thingamajigs each week. It's completely unacceptable, and I know you can do better. So perhaps there's another question. What reports? I did 14 thingamajigs last week, and 17 the week before. Where are these numbers coming from? And the boss might say, generic software sends us a report every week of everyone's key responsibilities and what they're getting done. The last few weeks have shown a dramatic and uncharacteristic decline in your work. I've been very worried about it and was glad we had this review coming up. And in this ridiculous, contrived hypothetical scenario, you could then go back to your computer and see that the software updated 6 weeks ago. And somewhere in that update, you didn't check a box right, and it excluded over half of your work from every report since. You show that to your boss, things get cleared up, and everything goes great. Because you asked the right questions instead of just reacting, you were able to find a misunderstanding and resolve the real issue. Obviously, not every situation is going to be near that convenient, but it does help lead us to the last point, which is to focus on the outcome, not on the offense. When we think about conflict, we usually think about relationship conflict, where things get personal and insults are thrown.
You suck.
No, you suck. As do you, and you.
Relationship conflict is absolutely toxic to culture, individual relationships, and productivity in general. But there's another kind of conflict called task conflict, which is disagreement around the best way to solve a complex or unfamiliar problem. And in those situations, task conflict has actually been shown to improve team performance. It's about the outcome, and is often remembered by the pithy sayings, it's not about who is right, it's about what is right. Or, it's not you versus me, it's us versus the problem. And if you've ever been in any relationship, you know that that applies to more than just the workplace. And so to show that, let's look at a less contrived example from outside the workplace. And this is in fact a true story. There was a time where my oldest son, Evan, would wake up insanely early, and then go into his little brother, Levi's room, and wake him up, causing Levi to cry and scream and be tired and grumpy for the rest of the day. It was the worst. So we spent some time teaching Evan that that wasn't okay. You can wake up early if you want, but you can't barge into your brother's room and wake him up when he still needs to sleep. Now, Evan's a smart kid, so he figured it out, and he stopped waking up his brother. Until one morning, at about 4 or 5 a.m., when I hear Levi start screaming bloody murder. I stumble out of bed, walk out of my room, and see Levi's door wide open, with Evan standing by his bed and Levi bawling his head off. I yelled, "Evan, you know better! Go to your room!" Evan starts crying and stammering, going, but, before he runs out of the room. It was not my proudest moment. I got Levi calmed down a bit and then went into Evan. Now, I try to be a good dad, so even though this is an example of me screwing up, I did eventually apply the principle. I took a deep breath, I calmed down and asked him why he had gone in to wake up his brother again, and he told me that he hadn't. Levi had started crying because he had a nightmare. It woke Evan up, and he had gone in to try to comfort him. Evan had just gotten there when I barged in, furious and screaming. Levi corroborated the story, and I felt like garbage. So then, Evan and I had a hug, he forgave me, and we talked about how we could change the outcome in the future. I could calm down before getting mad, and he could come wake me up first if Levi needed help. It doesn't always go that way. Sometimes Evan needs to change things. Sometimes I do, and sometimes we both do. And while I did get there eventually, there could have been so much less chaos and fear and sadness if I had calmed down and asked questions first, instead of just reacting with my amygdala. Whether at work, with friends, with your children, or your spouse, these 3 techniques of naming and taming your initial visceral response, asking questions to get accurate information, and collaboratively working together towards a shared future outcome can help even the most emotionally charged situations. If this was helpful, be sure to subscribe and share this video with someone else who may want to calm the chaos. And together, we can make the world a better place. There's another video here that YouTube thinks you should like. You should watch it and then share it with everyone you know. Hooray.